About a week ago, OpenAI announced the function calling update, which seemingly came out of nowhere. And this update makes life as a programmer so much easier. The update comes with two new models that we can basically force to output data in JSON format. This opens up endless opportunities. And in this video, I will show you how we can leverage this update to create a Spotify playlist generator. Here's the app that we're going to build in this video. You can just freely describe what kind of music you want, specify how many songs we want, hit create, and once we're finished, we can just press the link here, and this is the playlist that the AI generated. So let's do the setup first. Let's create our app.py and the .env file, open up a new terminal. Now we need to pip install OpenAI for the chat completion, Spotify for the Spotify API, python.env to read the .env file with our credentials, Streamlit for our front ends, and requests to do some network requests. Hit install. All right, now inside the .env file, I will now put our credentials that we need. We need the Spotify client ID, we need the Spotify client secret, and we need the OpenAI API key. All right, now I will go ahead and get the client ID and the client secret for Spotify. So head over to developer.spotify.com, press your name here on the top right, dashboard. Now create app, give it a name. I will call it playlist generate YouTube tutorial ChatGPT. For the website, I will put this localhost 8502. This is the default Streamlit port. The same will be for the redirect URI. I will just paste it in here and I understand and save. So now we created a Spotify app. Go to settings. I will copy the client ID and put it right here. And I will copy the client secret and put it right here. To get the Open API key, go to platform.openai.com/account/API keys. Press create new secret key. I will call it Spotify playlist generator. Create secret key and then just copy this key, put it right here. We're done with the setup and now we can code. I will start off by creating a form with a text input field where the user can type in which type of songs he would like to have in his playlist. And then I will also have a slider so the user can choose how many songs are in the playlist. So this is the form. I have a text input field where the user can just type whatever he or she wants. I have a slider that goes from 1 to 30 and is set to 10 by default. And I have a submit button. And if the submit button has not been pressed, we will not continue. And this is how it looks like. I can just type ahead and press create and nothing happens, of course. So the next step would be to ask ChatGPT to create a list of songs for us that fit the description provided. I am not using the function calling update yet. All I have done is load the .env file, set the API key for the OpenAI package so that we can actually do the requests, and then specify the model. I don't have access to GPT-4 API yet, so I'm using 3.5. And I put in two basic messages. One system message to kind of fine-tune how the GPT model is going to behave. All I'm saying is you are Music GPT, world's best music recommendation AI. Given a description of a user's music preference, you will recommend songs tailored to the user's preference. And then I put in a user message, which says create a playlist with song count. Song count comes from the slider. Songs that fits the following description, and then the prompt that the user put in. Come up with a creative and unique name for the playlist. If we have a look at it, if I just put a description right here, for example, music that I can listen to while driving at night through the rain, let's say 15 songs and hit create. So here's the result. Even though the data is kind of structured, it is not predictable. The LLM just chose to output it in this format, but parsing this will be hell. And here's where the function calling update comes into place. We can force it to use JSON as the output format. And here's how. So what we can do is we can put in this functions argument into the create method. And in here, we can pass in a list of JSON schemas. So let me go over it quickly. Inside this schema, we're defining the name of the function. In this case, I call it create playlist, a description, creates a Spotify playlist based on a list of songs that should be added to the list. And now we put in the parameters. We have an object, which is a JSON object, and it has three properties. It has the playlist name, it has a playlist description, and it has songs. The playlist name is just a string, and it's the name of the playlist. This playlist description is also simple. It's just a string and it describes the playlist. And then we have the songs attribute, which is an array of, again, objects, so JSON objects. And then again, each object inside this array has a song name attribute, which is a string and it's the name of the song, and an artists attribute, which is an array of artists. And I'm telling GPT that the song name and artists are required attributes. They need to be there. And I'm telling GPT that songs, playlist name, and playlist description are required attributes as well, so that the GPT model doesn't randomly decide to just leave one of them out. Now, here's the interesting part. This function doesn't need to exist. And in this case, it doesn't exist. This is an imaginary function that has properties that I need to continue with my code. And because I call this function create playlist and the user message says create a playlist, the GPT model will know that it needs to call this function. Now, in order to call this function, the model then knows that it needs to provide a playlist name, it needs to provide a playlist description, and it needs to provide a list of songs. And all of this data, the GPT model will fill out for me. And that's the trick. So let's have a look at the output. Now, this is the old result. Let me just hit create again. And there it is. We got valid JSON back. The answer does not contain any content, but we now have this new function call attribute in our JSON object right here. And the function call has arguments. And this is the JSON format that we wanted. And of course, Night Call Kavinsky, what else? This is exactly the song you would expect to get from the GPT model, right? Based on what I just provided it here in the prompt. And that's all we need to actually create a playlist. We have a playlist name, we have a playlist description, a playlist for driving at night through the rain. I mean, it's pretty accurate, right? And I have a list of songs. So here's a general outline of the next steps we need to take. First, we need to authenticate through the Spotify API. Since we're creating a playlist and the playlist is bound to a user's account, we need to have access to the user's account, basically. In order to create a playlist, we will then need to have a list of URIs of the songs that we want to put inside this playlist, right? It turns out that doing the auth workflow in Streamlit is kind of weird and ugly. This is a hack. What we're doing is, first of all, I will create an URL. This is the authorization endpoint of Spotify. We will pass in our client ID as a query parameter. We'll set the response type to code, the redirect URI to the one that we set in the Spotify dashboard. And the only scope we need is playlist modify private, because I don't want these playlists to be public. Now, if we have query parameters already in the search bar, we will just extract the code that we need. Otherwise, we will display a link that the user can click to log in via Spotify, and then we will extract the query parameters and return the code. So I will put it here in the beginning. Before showing the form, I will ask the user to log in, and if we don't get the authorization code, or if the user is not logged in yet, we will just return and not show the form. Here's how it looks like. This is how it looks like. Please log into Spotify. You just press this button and then you hit agree. And this is the code that I'm talking about here. The code right here. If this is not in the search bar, this form will not be shown. I did not find a better way to do this in Streamlit. If you have an idea, please let me know. I struggled for about an hour to make this work. So once the user logged in, we receive an authorization code, and this authorization code we need to use to request an access token. This access token usually expires after an hour. To do this, I wrote another function called get Spotify client, right? The first thing it does is it gets this access token. We do a pulse request to API/token, grant type authorization code. The code is the authorization code that we receive right here. The redirect URI, again, the one that we put in the dashboard, and then we provide the client ID and client secret. And then we instantiate Spotify.Spotify. Spotify is like a wrapper around the Spotify API, which makes life a little bit easier using the Spotify API. And we set auth to the access token. So once we reach this point, we can then get the Spotify client, right, with the authorization code. So now that we have the Spotify authentication out of the way, we can extract the playlist name, the playlist description, and the songs from the ChatGPT response, which is, again, the function call response. So JSON. After we have done that, we need to extract the song URIs. We need these URIs to actually create the playlist, right? We need to tell the playlist which songs are in, and we do this with these URIs. To get them, we need to do a search request for every song we have and then extract the URI for the song that we got, right? For this, we will use the Spotify client that we instantiated and we will do a simple search. We put in the song name, space, and then just the artist separated by a comma. So for example, hello space Adele. And if I was a singer there as well, would be hello space Adele, comma lemon, right? And we limit the search to 1 because we just want the number 1 result. From there on, this is a JSON that we get, we can just extract the URIs like so. So let's have a look at the data. These are the recommended songs, right? Night Call, Kavinsky, Toxic, Britney Spears, I guess, Midnight City, M83, and these are the URIs. The only thing that's left is to generate the playlist. Fortunately for us, the Spotify package has some helper methods. We can just call Spotify client.user playlist create. We pass in the user ID, which we get like this, the playlist name, which has been generated by AI, and I put AI dash before it so I know it's generated by AI. I set public to false and the description, which has also been generated by the AI. This call gives us a playlist ID, so we have created the playlist. Now we need to actually add the songs. We do this by calling again Spotify client.playlist add items. We pass in the playlist ID of the playlist that we just generated and the song URIs. And at the end, we display a link to the playlist. And that's all. About 140 lines of code and we're done. So let's look at the result. So I will use this prompt, 20 songs, and press create. So playlist created, click, and it generated AI Midnight Cruise. And these are the songs. By the way, let me know in the comments if you think that this fits the description. I think it looks pretty good. And now with all of that, we have a simple way to create a Spotify playlist based on a single prompt. I still find it fascinating that all of these things are possible so easily nowadays, whereas like 10 years ago, this would be nearly impossible. I'm excited to where the future is heading and see you in the next video. Bye.